Kenny Shue, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Mike. Appreciate it.
Look, you've got a new book out soon. I think it's in about July, if I recall correctly. An
Yes.
Inconvenient Minority, the Ivy League admission cases and the attack on Asian American excellence. Tell me, why did you choose this title?
Because Asian Americans in our culture today, and especially in America, and maybe in Australia too, there's this narrative right now with regards to race that says if you're white, you're privileged, if you're black, you're oppressed. Well, where do Asian Americans fit? Because on one level, we're supposed to be a minority, meaning we're supposed to be victims of society. We're supposed to play the part of being oppressed by society. But as you can see with every statistic, Asian Americans inconvenience that narrative. We have higher incomes, higher educational statistics, lower rates of crime than even white people in many cases in this country. And as a result of that, the left does not treat Asian Americans as a minority. In fact, in the cases of the Ivy Leagues, they treat Asian Americans worse than whites.
Harvard University grades on three things. Academics, makes sense. Extracurriculars, not too sure about that one, and a personality score. Tell us about this personality score. It's not really a personality at all, is it? It's quite racist.
So exactly. It's Harvard's preferred method of discriminating against Asian Americans. So the statistics are all out, and according to every objective metric, Asian Americans have to get about 240 points higher than whites to have the same chance of admission as whites, and about 440 points higher than blacks to have the same chance of admission to a school like Harvard University. And the way that they get away with this is in their rating system, they use this thing called a personality score. And the personality score is a entirely subjective evaluation. It's not backed up by any objective evidence that goes along with it. Basically, you come in and a Harvard interviewer says, it addresses things like, are you likable? Are you humor? Do you have humor? Do they see you as charismatic? And in all of these things, it's funny, Asian Americans score highest on academics, highest in extracurriculars, but for some reason score lowest on the personality score. And they use this metric to really balance for races.
Can you point to the most damaging policies and long-term impacts on Asian Americans and US society generally?
Well, I have to say this. The use of the personality score is very damaging, I think, to the Asian American mind and consciousness because, we're used to these stereotypes that says, oh, we're test-taking robots with no personality and everything like that. And the funny thing about these statistics is actually I digged into the data, which is part of my book, An Inconvenient Minority. I dig into the data and I show how all of the objective measures of so-called personality, like alumni interviews, teacher recommendations, Asians stack up well compared to whites and blacks and Hispanics. But when it comes to this final review process, they put all of these things together and they say, you're good, but you're not good enough. And that's the message that they put on Asian Americans to keep telling them, we're going to grade you on a different standard just because of the color of your skin. And because so many Asian Americans and so many immigrant parents, value prestige, value these Ivy League universities. The fact that Ivy League universities are doing this to Asian Americans causes many Asian Americans to doubt themselves, to feel bad, to actually feel justifiably frustrated about their place in society.
It's really sad that excellence is penalised. I sort of think maybe there's a bit of jealousy there too. In Australia, we call it the tall poppy syndrome, and we've just got to chop you down if you succeed or are too successful or look like you'll be very successful. Now, does your book focus exclusively on the US education system, or are there other areas where Asian Americans are facing new or overt discrimination?
Well, it's interesting you bring up, is it just a US phenomenon? I think I did an interview with a couple of people in Australia, and I know that among some of your most elite universities, even in Australia, the population of Asians, especially Chinese Australians in those universities is, disproportionate to their population in the population. And I can see what happens is if America, which is still the cultural center of the world, if America exports this kind of race ideology across the rest of the world to inspire this resentment against high achieving students and excellent people, people who can contribute to the country's culture of excellence, that could have worldwide reverberating effects. That could cause the left in many other countries to have and house suspicion against Asian Americans. Suspicion against Asian Americans isn't new, but what Harvard University is doing is it's legitimizing it in the eyes of the left and the elite public.
What about reaction from various groups? For example, the academia. How are they feeling about this?
So I talk about this in my book, in An Inconvenient Minority, and academia, which as we know leans left, leans liberal, they feel a great sense of shame. They feel a great sense of guilt over their supposed role in perpetuating this exclusive privileged system. Because as we know, Harvard University and all of these Ivy League universities, they're sitting on piles and piles of cash. They are some of the most privileged places on earth to be in. And a lot of these academics feel great guilt about being in that system. And so what do? They use this race ideology as an attempt to salve their moral guilt. The guilt that they feel. They use race preferences and they say, oh, this is how we take care of Black people. This is how we take care of Hispanic people. Where in reality, the statistics show that just creating victim classes and then affirmatively trying to put them into these elite universities where they're not qualified actually tends to have a lot of detrimental effects on these populations. A lot of these populations, Blacks and Hispanics, get discouraged. They have lower graduation rates. They have higher dropout rates, higher rates of depression, tend to graduate at the lower end of their class. And so this entire program, this entire race preferences program, does not do much to help people and does a lot to hurt people.
What about the media? You're in the media yourself with the Federalist, I think the Daily Signal, so you obviously know all about censorship. What about take out those two? Any other censorship being applied to yourself and the book?
So far, I'm very fortunate. I can't guarantee it so far. That's why me and my publisher, which I'm very grateful to work with, Diversion Books, they really specialize in getting the book to a variety of different outlets. That means we're not just going with Amazon. We are pursuing all avenues. That's why I would encourage your viewers, if you guys are interested in buying the book, to buy it, at an indie bookstore like Brookline Brooks Smith, or to get it at Walmart, and everything like that. That helps to temper down the expectations of just focusing too much on big tech and their censorship.
What about yourself from the start of writing the book, researching it and writing it and thinking about it? How have your opinions changed from the thought process of doing the book to now? Would have been some minor changes or major changes within yourself?
I hope that in terms of changes, I hope that America will realize that race as a category is really not a proper way to negotiate yourself in American society anymore. Race as a category increasingly means little in American society. More Americans are multiracial than ever. There's a higher rate of intermarriage than ever. There's a higher rate of fourth generation Hispanic, Asian Americans who more or less are of the dominant American culture. And even Black Americans, you try to put a Black American in a country like Nigeria or in a country like South Africa, people will instantly recognize them for being an American. The American identity, I think, overwhelms, as it should, the supposed racial classes and racial narratives that elite institutions like Harvard and Yale and Princeton are trying to propagate.
Sidebar question here, Your Honour. When Trump was in power, and now we have the Biden administration, which was worse?
I would say I would say the Trump administration did a couple of good things with regards to Asian Americans. First, they supported the lawsuit against Yale University, which is a similar lawsuit for discriminating against Asian Americans. And the Yale investigation, as I reveal in my book, An Inconvenient Minority, is actually a huge investigation. At the Trump administration Department of Justice found that Yale discriminates by race on all four aspects of their admissions process, from the initial review to the group committee to the final review committee. Yale uses a plus factor if you're Black or Hispanic and a minus factor if you're white or Asian, and they do that 4 times. So it really compounds the process 4 times against Asian Americans. Imagine having that high of a penalty weighed against you. So I think the Trump administration was good that they called it out. The Biden administration the Biden administration dropped that lawsuit. They said it wasn't going to be a focus of them anymore. And yet they make all of these executive orders to say we want to combat anti-Asian racism and everything like that due to COVID. It shows to me that the current administration, is only interested in defending Asian Americans when it fits their desired policy outcomes.
It's going to be an exciting time for you, July, middle of summer for
Yes.
you. And so a barbecue, a good book to read, a couple of wines to sip. What a wonderful way to while away the woes of the world. An Inconvenient Minority, out in July. What's the exact date?
July 13th, Mike.
Is it a Friday?
I think so, yes.
Oh, Friday the 13th. At least we're not suspicious.
Yeah.
Kenny Xu, thank you very much.
I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you.